You're always the one who listens, the one who shows up, the one who gives more than you should, and swallows the pain when it's not returned. At first, it feels like kindness, like strength, like something noble. But then it starts to rot. You realize that the people who claim to care only come around when they need something. You start to see the pattern, and it hurts, because it's not just once. It's everywhere. In relationships, in family, even at work. You become the emotional container for everyone else, while no one seems to notice that you're running on empty. And yet, you keep giving, because that's what you've always done. Because part of you still hopes that if you give enough, someone will finally stay. But what if I told you this isn't random? What if the reason people use you isn't because they're cruel, but because they've been taught by your silence? What if you've unknowingly trained the world to see you as less than you are? If you've ever felt like people only show up when they need something, stay with me. What you're about to learn will change the way you see every relationship in your life. Most people don't start out trying to be used. You just want to be loved, to be seen, to be safe. So when someone needs you, really needs you, it feels good, like purpose, like connection, like maybe this time, if you give enough, they won't leave. But that feeling goes back further than you think. Because deep down, many of us learned early that love was something we had to earn. Not by being ourselves, but by becoming what others needed. The helpful one, the good listener, the one who never asks for too much. And over time, you start to believe that your worth depends on your usefulness, that the only way to belong is to disappear into what other people want, and that saying no is dangerous because it might mean rejection. That's how it begins, with little betrayals of yourself, a swallowed truth here, a forced smile there, a quiet, invisible surrender of your inner voice, until eventually you're not helping anymore. You're leaking. And the people around you, they don't see the cost. They just keep taking. Not always out of malice, sometimes out of habit, because you've shown them that you'll keep giving even when it hurts. But here's the truth. People can't use you unless you give them the tools. And often, we hand them over without even realizing it, in the name of love, loyalty, or fear. This isn't weakness, it's adaptation. A survival style you picked up when it felt safer to be pleasing than to be honest. Safer to stay silent than to risk being left behind. But you're not that child anymore, and what once protected you is now what's breaking you. You're allowed to stop playing the role. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to want love that doesn't require self-erasure. And the moment you start listening to the part of you that's tired of being everything for everyone, that's the moment this pattern begins to break. Most people imagine being used as something others do to them. Someone crosses a line, takes advantage, exploits your kindness. And while that's part of the picture, it's not the whole truth. Because underneath the experience of being used is a quieter, more painful reality. You often helped it happen. Not out of stupidity or weakness, but because somewhere deep in your unconscious, it felt safer to be needed than to be seen. You gave more than you should have, not because they asked, but because it made you feel wanted. You allowed your own needs to disappear, not out of virtue, but out of fear. The fear that if you stopped giving, there would be no reason left for anyone to stay. This invisible pattern often begins in childhood, not always through abuse or neglect, but through the subtler emotional contracts we learn to sign without knowing it. You might have learned that love came with conditions, that affection was given when you were quiet, helpful, adaptable. So you started offering parts of yourself in exchange for warmth. You smiled through discomfort. You anticipated the needs of others before they spoke. You learned to suppress your anger, your exhaustion, your sadness, because there was no room for them in the world you lived in. And as the years went on, that strategy hardened into an identity, the one who gives, the one who understands, the one who never makes it about themselves. And that identity, while it kept you connected, came at the cost of your authenticity. It created a version of you that others could consume without ever having to truly reciprocate. Jung would call this a false self, a persona crafted not from your essence, but from your survival instinct. And like all personas, it serves a function. It protects you. It allows you to navigate a world where directness might feel dangerous, but it also becomes a prison. Because the more you rely on this role, the more you become the emotional caretaker, the invisible backbone, the uncomplaining supporter. The more you attract people who are happy to take what you give and never ask who you really are. These people don't necessarily have malicious intent. They simply mirror what you present. And if what you present is endless availability, quiet sacrifice, and emotional labor disguised as love, then that's exactly what they'll keep expecting. The tragedy is that by trying to preserve connection, you end up reinforcing your own invisibility. You become a background character in other people's lives, not because they placed you there, but because that's the only way you believed you'd be allowed to exist. And eventually, you begin to feel resentful, bitter, used. But the resentment isn't just toward them. It's toward the part of you that keeps agreeing to this deal. The part that doesn't speak up, that fears boundaries, that panics at the thought of disappointing someone, even when you're breaking under the weight of their expectations. And until you face that part, until you confront the identity that thrives on being needed, the cycle will repeat. Different faces, same pattern. People taking more than they give. You nodding through your own depletion and wondering every time why it always ends the same. The truth is, being used is never just about the other person. It's about the space in you that believes love has to be earned, that silence is safer than rejection, that if you give enough, someone will finally see you. But here's what Jung teaches us. The shadow isn't just the ugly, repressed parts of ourselves. It's also the good we disown, our right to say no, to be seen, to take up space. And unless we integrate those disowned aspects, we remain manipulable. We become predictable to those who sense our weakness. Because unconsciously, we are begging to be needed, and the world responds accordingly. Carl Jung believed that most suffering is self-inflicted, not consciously, but through the invisible architecture of the psyche. What we repress becomes what controls us. What we hide becomes what others exploit. If you're constantly being used, the question isn't just, why are they doing this? It's, what part of me allows it? Jung's work reveals something difficult to swallow. People don't just respond to who we are. They respond to who we pretend to be. And the more we deny our own needs, the more we attract those who are happy to do the same. They don't see your boundaries because you buried them. They don't hear your no because you never say it. And they don't respect your emotional depth because you offer it without ever asking for it back. Jung called this the persona, the mask we wear to survive social reality. It's not inherently false, but it becomes dangerous when we forget it's a mask. You may present as kind, helpful, agreeable, but if that persona is built on top of fear, abandonment, or shame, it becomes a signal. It tells others, I will give, and I won't ask for anything in return. I will carry your burdens and silence mine. I will offer my time, my energy, my heart, and if you don't offer yours, I'll still be here. This kind of persona is not love, it's submission. And Jung's brutal insight is that you create your manipulators by refusing to integrate your shadow. Every time you disown your anger, your limits, your darker instincts, you give that power away to someone else. And the world, unconsciously, fills that vacuum. The shadow, in Jungian terms, is everything you deny in yourself. Your rage, your selfishness, your need to be seen. But it's not evil. It's power waiting to be claimed. And if you don't claim it, others will use it against you. They'll exploit your guilt, twist your empathy, weaponize your silence. And not because they're villains, but because humans, unconsciously, seek the path of least resistance. If someone shows you, they'll carry the emotional weight of every interaction. Most people will let them. You think you're being noble, but Jung would say you're being split. One part of you is smiling, the other is screaming. And as long as you refuse to reconcile those parts, to bring your hidden self into the light, you will remain vulnerable to anyone who senses the fracture. This is why your life doesn't change just by setting boundaries. Because boundaries spoken from fear are like paper walls. They collapse the moment someone leans on them. Real change happens when your internal world becomes whole again. When the parts of you that were exiled, the selfish parts, the angry parts, the parts that want, are no longer seen as threats, but as allies. Jung didn't believe in perfection. He believed in integration. The goal is not to be pure. The goal is to be real. And real people, whole people, are far harder to use. Because they don't perform roles. They don't sacrifice authenticity for approval. They don't barter their soul for connection. They are both light and shadow, and that makes them unbreakable. Breaking this pattern isn't about becoming harder. It's about becoming whole. Because what you need isn't a new mask. It's the courage to take the old one off. You don't need to be colder, crueler, or more manipulative to survive in this world. You need to stop abandoning yourself in the name of being good. The first step is awareness. Notice the moments you say yes while your body says no. Feel the tension in your chest when you're about to betray yourself to avoid disappointing someone else. These moments are gold. They are invitations to break the trance, to stop performing the role you've outgrown. And then comes the harder part. Allow yourself to be seen in your fullness. Not just the agreeable parts, Not just the helper, but the part that wants, the part that feels rage, the part that's tired of being the strong one all the time. This isn't selfish, it's real. Because if you only let people see the parts of you that serve them, then deep down, you'll always believe that your whole self is unworthy of love. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But who you truly are has needs. It has limits. It gets angry, and it's allowed to. Start small. Say no when you mean it, even if your voice shakes. Pause before offering help and ask yourself, do I really want to give this? Or do I just want to be needed? Let discomfort come. Let people be surprised. Let them even get upset. Because when you stop being who they expect, you give yourself the chance to become who you actually are. This is how you reclaim power. Not by fighting the world, but by refusing to abandon yourself in order to survive it. You weren't weak. You were trying to survive. You gave too much because you were afraid of what would happen if you didn't. And somewhere along the way, you forgot that love doesn't have to cost your soul. But the truth is, you were never powerless. You just believed that being chosen meant being useful. That your softness was a liability. That silence was safer than being misunderstood. It's not. You can be kind without being consumed. You can give without draining. You can love without disappearing. The people who truly see you will never need you to shrink to stay. They'll meet your no with respect. They'll honor your wholeness, not just your utility. And those who can't, let them go. Because the more you reclaim the parts of yourself you buried to survive, the more you'll see that being used was never your fate. It was a mirror, reflecting the places where you hadn't yet stood up for your own worth. You don't need to prove your value through sacrifice. You already have value. The moment you stop performing for love, you make space to actually receive it. If this resonated with you, like, share, and subscribe to The Existential Edge for more videos like this.